The Cody Willard Show.
I actually did a little bit of footage last night. If you'd roll it from my family, I just went around and grabbed a handful of the Amazon and Apple devices we have. Who's Cody Willard? My daughter says.
Cody Willard is an American investor, television anchor, and former hedge fund manager.
Chris, I was hoping you actually had the clip where she said, "Who's Cody Willard?" and Amazon said, "I don't know." But the point being that if you'll see, we've got all these devices down here, Amazon and Alexa. I've got Fire Sticks, Alexa devices. Amaris there is grabbing one of the Alexa, I don't even remember what that Echo Tower, whatever that thing is. And Apple and Amazon are truly trillion-dollar companies. I mean, Apple's already there outright. I actually predicted a long time ago. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let me try to put some perspective. I wrote this for Trading with Cody subscribers yesterday morning when I was thinking about how $1 trillion, let's just put some perspective on what $1 trillion is. The companies, Apple and Amazon, are both essentially worth $1 trillion at this particular moment. $1 trillion is 1,000 million dollars. So that's a lot of money. I'm sorry, 1,000 billion dollars. You see how big those numbers get? 1,000 billion dollars is $1 trillion bucks. All right, here's some more ways to think about it. The gross world product, basically the economy of the entire world, $90 trillion this year. Apple and Amazon, worth $1 trillion each. Total U.S. gross domestic product this year, about $20 trillion. So Apple's and Amazon's market cap are equal to about 5% of the entire United States economy, and equivalent to about 1%, more than 1%. Together, they make up more than 2% in their valuation. It's more than 2% of the entire world's annual economic activity. Apple will probably do close to $276 billion in sales next year, up from $263 billion. That's equivalent to more than 1% of the U.S. GDP. Interestingly, though, Apple does most of their sales overseas, unlike Amazon, who will actually do close to $286 billion in sales this year, surpassing Apple on the top line, up from $234 billion in 2018. Unlike Apple, almost all of Amazon's revenues are actually in the United States. And you're talking about more than 1% of the United States, more 1 cent out of every dollar of economic activity is how much revenue Amazon does. That's not an actual measurement. It's not like Apple, like when the economists measure GDP, that they take Amazon's actual revenue top line and put it in there. But because it is all domestic sales, much of that actually is contributing to the United States GDP. I don't think it's quite 1 cent out of every dollar going to Amazon yet. Apple will buy back more than $100 billion of Apple shares this year, and also issue up to 15, probably more than 15, maybe up to $20 billion in dividends this year. That's $115 billion, equivalent to 0.6% of the US GDP. Apple will be sending out to shareholders and or buying stock back with $115 billion of cash. Amazon hasn't bought a share of Amazon stock back in many, many years, and not issuing any dividends. And I don't expect they'll be doing either one of those things anytime soon. Apple profits this next year, probably $70 billion in 2019. That's up from about $60 billion this year. Amazon is expected to generate only $13 billion in profit, versus that's next year, 2019, versus this year's $9 billion in profit. So Amazon is going to do more sales than Apple this year, but will have a fraction of the profits. Why? Because a retailer of other people's products doesn't have the gross margins that an Apple product maker, which makes their own products and sells them, would. Of course, Amazon is starting and making ever more hardware devices and depending more and more upon software revenue. And there, the margins are huge. In Amazon Web Services and in Apple's services business, when you're buying and selling or doing anything in the App Store, for example, those margins for Apple and Amazon are probably, the gross margins are over 90%. So lots of profits to come for Amazon as their platforms become more important drivers versus the retail side of the business. Whereas Apple also actually going to be expanding margins in coming years because services are becoming a bigger part of their overall revenue. Services are growing 30 or 40% per year for Apple. The hardware business in a good year grows 10 or 15, maybe 20%. And in a bad year with an iPhone cycle that didn't roll out or something, can actually be slightly down. Amazon, I don't think, has ever had a down year in sales. Apple's up 51,000% since its IPO 38 years ago. That is an 18% annualized gain. Amazon is up more than Apple in a shorter amount of time. 108,000% profits in Amazon in 21 years. And that is a 40% annualized gain. That's why Jeff Bezos is the richest man in the history of the planet, the richest person, the richest being, not including supernatural beings. Apple has almost 5 billion shares outstanding. Amazon has 500 million shares outstanding. That is why Apple's stock price is almost 1/10 of what Amazon's stock price is, but they are both have $1 trillion market caps. And Apple has Siri, which sucks. And Amazon has Alexa, which is pretty awesome.
To view the whole episode, just Google The Cody Willard Show, Episode 5. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the Facebook page, and subscribe to the podcast. For more, go to tradingwithcody.com.